My MIL confessed their darkest secret in Chinese, not knowing I was fluent. The words hit me like ice water. She's too stubborn. We need to make David see she's destroying our family before it's too late. I stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, holding a tray of jasmine tea, watching my mother-in-law Lynn whisper urgently to my father-in-law in rapid Mandarin. They sat hunched together on the living room sofa, completely unaware that I understood every syllable of their conspiracy. The plan is working, she continued, her voice barely audible but crystal clear to my trained ear. David is starting to doubt her. Last week when I told him about the rude things she supposedly said about his grandmother's cooking, I could see the confusion in his eyes. He's beginning to question if he really knows his wife. My hands trembled slightly, causing the delicate porcelain cups to clink together. I'd been married to their son David for 18 months, and for every single one of those months, Lin Chen had been systematically poisoning our relationship with surgical precision. She'd smile to my face during family dinners, compliment my dress, ask about my work at the marketing firm, all while speaking enough broken English to maintain the illusion that our communication was limited. What she didn't know was that I'd spent 4 years at UC Berkeley studying Mandarin, followed by a semester abroad in Beijing. I was more than conversational, I was fluent enough to catch every nuance, every calculated pause, every manipulative inflection in her voice. At Sunday's dinner, I'll tell David that she said his sister Jennifer was getting fat and lazy since the baby, Lynn continued, adjusting her reading glasses. Americans are so sensitive about weight. He'll be forced to defend Jennifer, and when he confronts Sarah about it, she'll deny it. Then he'll think she's lying. My father-in-law, Wei, nodded slowly. He was clearly the reluctant accomplice in this scheme. Are you certain about this approach? David loves her very much. What if he doesn't believe us? He will, Lynn said with chilling confidence. I've been planting seeds for months. The story about her supposedly criticizing our New Year traditions. The lie about her calling our neighborhood too ethnic when she was looking at apartments. Each incident by itself seems small, but together they paint a picture of someone who doesn't respect our culture. Our son is traditional at heart, he won't stay with a woman who disrespects his family. I pressed myself against the hallway wall, my heart hammering against my ribs. This explained everything. The confused looks David had been giving me lately. The way conversations would die when I entered rooms. His sister Jennifer's sudden coolness toward me. The pointed questions about my comfort level with Chinese customs. Next month at David's birthday party, I'll give him the ultimatum, Lynn said, her voice taking on a triumphant edge. Family or wife? He'll choose family, he always has. That's how we raised him. And if Sarah fights back? Wei asked. Lynn laughed, a sound like breaking glass. What can she do? She can't prove anything. She doesn't even understand what we're saying right now. American women are emotional and impulsive. She'll make herself look crazy trying to defend against things she can't even comprehend. I slowly backed away from the doorway, my mind racing. David's birthday party was in 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks to gather evidence, 3 weeks to plan my counterattack. What Lynn didn't realize was that she'd just handed me the ammunition I needed to destroy her carefully constructed web of lies. And I understood every beautiful, damning word of it. I managed to serve the tea with steady hands, bowing slightly as I'd learned was proper, while Lynn and Wei seamlessly switched to discussing the weather in English. Lynn even complimented my choice of jasmine blend, her warm smile never wavering. The performance was masterful. If I hadn't just heard her plotting my marriage's destruction, I would have bought every second of it. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while David slept peacefully beside me. His arm was draped across my waist, and I studied his face in the dim light filtering through our bedroom curtains. How many lies had he already absorbed? When he'd asked me last Tuesday if I really thought his grandmother's dumplings were too salty, I'd laughed it off, assuming he was just being paranoid. Now I realized Lynn had already poisoned that well too. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Best Buy. I needed evidence, and I needed it badly. The sales associate, a kid who couldn't have been older than 20, showed me 3 different voice recording apps and helped me test the audio quality on my iPhone. You doing some kind of interview project? He asked, adjusting the external microphone attachment. Something like that, I replied, practicing starting and stopping the recording. How long can it record continuously? This app? Up to 6 hours on a single session, assuming you've got the storage space. Perfect. Sunday dinners at the Chen house typically lasted 4 hours, from afternoon mahjong to evening dessert. I spent the weekend researching everything I could about covert recording laws in California. 2-party consent state, which meant I couldn't legally record Lynn without her knowledge. But I wasn't planning to use this in court, I just needed David to hear the truth in his mother's own voice. Sunday arrived with typical Southern California sunshine. David hummed while getting dressed, excited as always for family dinner. Mom said she's making your favorite spring rolls, he mentioned, nodding his tie. My favorite spring rolls. The same spring rolls Lynn had spent months telling him I'd criticized for being too greasy. I wondered what story she'd craft from this kindness. That's sweet of her, I managed, slipping my phone into the inner pocket of my purse, recording app ready. The Chin family home in Monterey Park buzzed with activity when we arrived. Jennifer was there with baby Marcus, along with David's younger brother Kevin and his girlfriend Amy. Lynn orchestrated the afternoon like a conductor, directing conversations, refilling glasses, ensuring everyone felt included. Everyone except me. I noticed it immediately, the subtle exclusions Lynn had been engineering. When the family discussed Kevin's new job at the accounting firm, Lynn translated the conversation for Amy's benefit, even though Amy spoke perfectly adequate English. When I asked about Jennifer's postpartum recovery, Lynn interrupted to ask David about his work project instead. Every time I tried to contribute to discussions about Chinese holidays or cultural traditions, Lynn would smile politely and redirect the conversation to safer topics. But the most chilling moment came during mahjong. Lynn was teaching Amy the basic rules, patiently explaining each tile's significance in Mandarin before translating to English. When Amy struggled with a particular concept, Lynn turned to me. Sarah, you probably wouldn't understand this, she said sweetly. It's very cultural. Traditional. The dismissal was so smooth, so perfectly disguised as consideration, that Amy actually nodded sympathetically in my direction. David didn't even look up from his tiles. My phone had been recording for 2 hours, capturing every Mandarin aside between Lynn and Wei, every strategic manipulation. But I was beginning to realize that Lynn's web was even more sophisticated than I'd initially understood. She wasn't just lying about what I'd said. She was systematically erasing me from the family entirely. After dinner, while the family gathered in the living room for dessert, I excused myself to use the bathroom. Instead, I slipped into Lynn's home office, a small room where she managed the family's finances and kept her important documents. My heart pounded as I quietly closed the door behind me. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but something Lynn had said earlier nagged at me. During dinner, she'd mentioned in Mandarin to way that the apartment situation worked perfectly. When David and I were house hunting 8 months ago, we'd fallen in love with a beautiful place in Pasadena, only to have our application mysteriously rejected despite having excellent credit and stable income. Lynn's desk was meticulously organized. Bank statements, tax documents, and correspondence were filed in labeled folders. I pulled out my phone and used the flashlight to scan through the papers, being careful not to disturb anything. That's when I found it. In a folder marked Property Investments, there was a cashier's check receipt dated exactly 9 months ago. Made out to Pacific Property Management for $15,000. The memo line read, Application Processing, Chin Family. My blood ran cold. Pacific Property Management was the company that had rejected our apartment application. Lynn had paid them $15,000 8 months before we even started looking at apartments. This wasn't just about sabotaging my marriage through lies, she'd been orchestrating our entire living situation. I quickly photographed the receipt with my phone, making sure to capture every detail. The date, the amount, the company name, even Lynn's signature on the bank withdrawal slip paperfully attached behind it. But there was more. Underneath the receipt was a printed email exchange between Lynn and someone named Patricia Wong at Pacific Property Management. The subject line made my stomach drop, ensuring application denial for David Chin/Sarah Morrison. The email thread was extensive. Lynn had been monitoring David's social media for mentions of apartment hunting, then preemptively contacting property managers to ensure our applications would be rejected. She paid consultation fees to at least 4 different companies over the past year. The Pasadena apartment wasn't the only one, she'd systematically blocked us from every place we'd applied to. The final email in the chain was dated just 3 weeks ago. Thank you for your continued cooperation, Patricia. The downtown loft viewing next month should proceed as discussed. Rejection reason, insufficient rental history. Payment to follow via usual channels. I almost dropped my phone. David had mentioned wanting to look at a downtown loft next month, right after his birthday party. Lynn was already 3 steps ahead, planning to crush our housing hopes even after she planned to deliver her ultimatum. Sarah? You okay in there? David's voice called from the hallway. Just a minute. I managed, quickly photographing the rest of the email thread. My hands shook as I carefully replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. When I emerged from the office, David was waiting with a concerned expression. Mom was worried you might be feeling sick. You've been quiet all afternoon. Of course she was worried. I forced a smile. Just a headache. Your mom's right, I should probably take better care of myself. David's face softened, and he rubbed my shoulder gently. She really does care about you, you know. Mom mentioned that she's been worried about us lately. She thinks maybe we're under too much stress with work and apartment hunting. The manipulation was breathtaking. Lynn had engineered our housing stress, then positioned herself as the concerned mother-in-law worried about its impact on our marriage. She's very perceptive, I said, tasting the bitterness of each word. As we rejoined the family, Lynn looked up from serving tea with that same warm smile. Sarah, dear, you look pale. Are you getting enough rest? Sitting there surrounded by David's family, I realized the true scope of what I was facing. This wasn't just about exposing lies told at family dinners. Lynn had been controlling our entire life, and she'd been billing us for the privilege. The drive home was torture. David chatted about his brother Kevin's promotion and how proud his parents were, completely oblivious to the nuclear evidence sitting in my purse. Every few minutes, he'd glance over with those concerned looks that had become so frequent lately. You've been different recently, he said as we pulled into our apartment complex. Distant. Mom thinks maybe you're unhappy with our life here. I almost laughed. Of course Lynn thought that. She'd engineered every disappointment, then swooped in to interpret my reactions for her son. I'm just tired, I said, but David wasn't letting it go. Sarah, be honest with me. Do you really want to be part of this family? The question hit like a slap. I turned to study his face in the dashboard light, seeing doubt that hadn't been there 6 months ago. Lynn's poison was working faster than I'd realized. Why would you ask me that? Little things, he said, running his hands through his hair. Comments you've made about our traditions. The way you react to Mom's suggestions. Last month when she recommended that herbal tea for your insomnia, you seemed almost hostile. I remembered that conversation perfectly. Lynn had recommended tea in front of David, then whispered to Wei in Mandarin that American women were too proud to accept wisdom from their elders. When I politely declined, saying I preferred chamomile, she'd apparently spun it into evidence of my rejection of Chinese medicine entirely. David, I love your family, I said carefully. But don't you think some of these stories about things I've supposedly said seem out of character for me? His jaw tightened. Are you calling my mother a liar? The loyalty in his voice was absolute. Lynn had calculated correctly. When forced to choose sides, David would defend his family. The realization crystallized something cold and determined in my chest. I had exactly 2 weeks and 4 days until his birthday party. Time to get to work. The next morning, I took a personal day and drove to Monterey Park. Not to the Chen house, to Pacific Property Management's office 3 blocks away. I'd spent the night researching Patricia Wong and discovered she was listed as their client relations specialist, which apparently meant professional apartment application rejection coordinator. The office was smaller than I'd expected, squeezed between a nail salon and a dim sum restaurant. Patricia Wong turned out to be a woman in her 50s with an expensive handbag and the kind of smile that meant she was already calculating how much money I might be worth. I'm interested in your consultation services, I told the receptionist, using the same language from Lynn's emails. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Patricia in her cluttered office, secretly recording our entire conversation. Our consultation services are very specialized, Patricia explained, her tone careful. We work with families who have specific concerns about their children's housing choices. Sometimes young people don't understand what living situations are appropriate for their circumstances. Like if they're dating someone the family doesn't approve of? Patricia's smile widened. Exactly. We can ensure that certain applications face additional scrutiny. Sometimes young couples need guidance toward housing that better fits their family's expectations. My stomach churned, but I kept my voice steady. What would something like that cost? For comprehensive consultation services, we typically recommend a retainer starting at $10,000. That covers up to 6 months of application management and guidance services. Application management. She made destroying people's housing prospects sound like a legitimate business service. I see you've worked with the Chin family before, I said, watching her reaction carefully. Patricia's expression didn't change, but she took a long pause before responding. I'm not able to discuss specific client relationships. Privacy is very important in our line of work. Of course. But hypothetically, if I wanted to prevent someone from getting approved for apartments in specific neighborhoods, you could handle that? Hypothetically, yes. We have relationships with property managers throughout the San Gabriel Valley, and downtown LA quality control is essential in maintaining neighborhood standards. I left Patricia's office with a recorded confession and a business card, feeling simultaneously vindicated and sick to my stomach. Lynn hadn't just sabotaged our housing search, she'd hired professionals who made a living destroying people's lives at the request of controlling family members. But I wasn't done. If Lynn wanted to play chess, I was about to show her what happened when you underestimated your opponent. That evening, I started making calls to every apartment complex that had rejected our applications over the past year. I had some very specific questions about their relationship with Pacific Property Management. The birthday party couldn't come soon enough. The apartment complex investigations yielded results beyond my wildest expectations. Over 3 days of carefully worded phone calls, I discovered that Pacific Property Management had been running their consultation services for at least 5 years. The manager at Sunset Gardens Apartments, where we'd been rejected despite exceeding all their stated requirements, was surprisingly candid once I explained I was considering legal action. Look, we got paid $3,000 to flag your application, she admitted during our second conversation. The whole thing felt wrong, but Patricia Wong said the family had legitimate concerns about financial responsibility. We get these requests maybe once a month, parents worried about their kids' choices. $3,000. Lynn had paid multiple companies thousands of dollars each, just to ensure David and I couldn't find a decent place to live. The financial records I'd photographed showed payments totaling over $43,000 across 18 months. She'd spent more on sabotaging our housing search than most people made in a year. But the real breakthrough came Wednesday evening, when David's sister Jennifer called me directly for the first time in months. Sarah, can we talk? She asked, her voice strained. Something weird happened today, and I can't stop thinking about it. We met at a Starbucks halfway between our apartments. Jennifer looked exhausted, bouncing baby Marcus on her lap while trying to juggle her coffee. I'd always liked Jennifer, she was direct and funny, with none of David's tendency to avoid difficult conversations. Mom called me this morning, she began, glancing around nervously. She wanted me to remember exactly what you said about my weight at last Sunday's dinner. She kept pushing for details about how you supposedly criticized my post-baby body. My pulse quickened. What did you tell her? That's the thing, you never said anything about my weight. You complimented my dress and asked how I was feeling. That's it. But Mom insisted I must have forgotten that you'd made some comment about American women not taking care of themselves after childbirth. Jennifer shifted Marcus to her other arm, frowning. She seemed really frustrated when I couldn't give her the story she wanted. I chose my words carefully. Has your mom ever asked you to remember conversations differently before? Jennifer was quiet for a long moment, stirring her latte. Now that you mention it, yeah. She's been doing that a lot lately. Last month she swore you'd criticized her cooking, but I was standing right there when you said how much you loved the dumplings. And that story about you calling our neighborhood too ethnic? I never heard you say anything like that. My heart started racing. Jennifer was Lynn's own daughter, and even she was starting to notice the inconsistencies. Jennifer, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Do you think your mother likes me? She looked uncomfortable, bouncing Marcus more vigorously. Mom wants what's best for David. She's very protective of him. That's not what I asked. Jennifer sighed deeply. She thinks David could have done better. Someone who understands our culture more naturally. But Sarah, she's never said anything directly critical about you to me. It's more like, she points out little things that seem off, and asks if I've noticed them too. The manipulation was even more sophisticated than I'd realized. Lynn wasn't just lying about what I'd said, she was training David's siblings to doubt their own memories, to second-guess their positive impressions of me. Has she ever spoken to you in Mandarin about me? Jennifer's expression changed immediately. You don't speak Mandarin. That wasn't my question. She looked down at Marcus, avoiding my eyes. Sometimes she and Dad talk privately. I don't always catch everything, my Mandarin isn't great anymore. But you catch some of it. Sarah, I don't think this conversation is. Jennifer, please. I think your mother has been lying about me to David, and I think you know it. The words hung in the air between us. Jennifer was clearly wrestling with family loyalty versus her own observations. Finally, she looked up at me with something like relief in her eyes. Last Sunday, when you were in the bathroom, Mom told Dad in Mandarin that the American girl was finally starting to crack under pressure. She said you'd be gone by Christmas, and David would thank her later. Jennifer's voice dropped to a whisper. But Sarah, you weren't acting any different than usual. If anything, you seemed more relaxed than you've been in months. Bingo. Jennifer had just confirmed that Lynn was reporting on my behavior in real time, interpreting my actions through a lens designed to support her predetermined narrative. There's something else, Jennifer continued, looking guilty. Kevin's girlfriend Amy? Mom's been asking her lots of questions about American dating culture. Specifically about how American women handle divorce. Amy mentioned it to Kevin because it seemed like such a weird topic for casual conversation. The pieces clicked into place. Lynn wasn't just planning to break up David and me, she was already researching the aftermath, preparing David's family for the divorce she was orchestrating. I reached across the table and squeezed Jennifer's hand. Thank you for telling me this. I know it wasn't easy. Sarah, what are you going to do? I looked at Jennifer, David's sister, Lynn's daughter, caught in the middle of a war she hadn't asked for. In 10 days, at David's birthday party, I was going to detonate everything. Jennifer deserved to know it was coming. I'm going to tell David the truth. All of it. He might not believe you. Mom's been in his ear for months. I smiled, thinking about the hours of recordings on my phone, the financial evidence, Patricia Wong's inadvertent confession. I'm not going to ask him to take my word for it. Jennifer studied my face for a long moment. You're not who she thinks you are you? No, I said. I'm really not. The next morning brought a curveball I hadn't anticipated. David was still in the shower when his phone buzzed with a text from his mother. I glanced at the screen and felt my blood turn to ice. David, we need to talk today. Sarah left her purse open at dinner Sunday. I found something concerning. Come alone. Mom. My hand shook as I grabbed my own phone, frantically checking the photos I'd taken in Lynn's office. Had I missed something? Left some trace of my investigation? I'd been so careful to put everything back exactly as I'd found it. David emerged from the bathroom, toweling his hair. Mom wants to see me today, he said, reaching for his phone. Something about, what the hell? He read the message twice, his expression darkening. Sarah, did you go through Mom's things on Sunday? The accusation hit like a physical blow. What? No, of course not. She says you left your purse open and she found something that concerned her. What could she have possibly seen? My mind raced through possibilities. My purse had been with me the entire evening, except when I'd excused myself to use the bathroom and gone to Lynn's office instead. Unless. David, I didn't go through your mother's belongings. But think about this logically, why would she be looking through my purse in the first place? He paused in buttoning his shirt, considering this. Maybe something fell out? Mom's helpful like that, she probably would have tried to put it back. Helpful. Right. More likely Lynn had fabricated this entire scenario as her next move. But what had triggered it? Had she somehow realized I'd been in her office? What time are you meeting her? Lunch. She wants me to come to the house. David's voice carried that familiar defensive edge that appeared whenever anyone questioned his mother's motives. Sarah, if there's something you're not telling me, I'm telling you everything. The irony wasn't lost on me, I was lying while defending myself against false accusations. But Lynn had forced this game, and I intended to win it. After David left, I immediately called Jennifer. Your mother just accused me of snooping through her belongings. Did she say anything to you about Sunday? No, but... Jennifer paused. Actually, yes. She called Kevin yesterday asking if Amy had noticed you acting suspicious during dinner. She specifically wanted to know if you'd been gone from the group for any unusual amount of time. My stomach dropped. Lynn was building a timeline, constructing evidence for whatever story she planned to tell David today. This wasn't random paranoia, it was calculated escalation. Jennifer, I need to ask you something important. Has your mother ever accused David's previous girlfriends of going through her things? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Jennifer? Oh my God, she whispered. Melissa. David's ex from 2 years ago. Mom claimed she found Melissa going through the family photo albums, looking for information about David's past relationships. David was so embarrassed he broke up with her the next week. Another piece of Lynn's pattern revealed. When manipulation wasn't working fast enough, she escalated to accusations of boundary violations. David's protective instincts toward his family would override any defense his girlfriend might offer. Did you believe the story about Melissa? At the time, yes. But now that you mention it, Melissa never seemed like the type to snoop. She was actually kind of shy around us. I could practically hear Jennifer's worldview reshaping itself in real time. How many of David's relationships had Lynn destroyed with this exact playbook? There's something else, Jennifer continued. Kevin mentioned that Mom's been asking Dad about moving David's birthday party up. Instead of next weekend, she wants to do it this Saturday. She told Dad it was because of some conflict with the restaurant reservation, but Kevin called the restaurant, they have availability both days. This Saturday. That gave me 4 days instead of 10. Lynn was accelerating her timeline, probably because she sensed David was beginning to question the mounting accusations against me. Sarah, what are you really planning to do at this party? I looked at my phone, at the recordings and photos that could demolish Lynn's carefully constructed lies. 4 days to prepare for war. I'm going to show David exactly who his mother really is. And if he doesn't believe you? That was the question that had been keeping me awake at night. David's loyalty to his family ran deeper than his relationship with me. Lynn had counted on that from the beginning. Then at least I'll know I fought back. The lunch meeting with Lynn lasted 3 hours. When David finally came home, his face was a mask I'd never seen before, equal parts hurt, confusion, and something that looked dangerously close to betrayal. We need to talk, he said, not even bothering to take off his jacket. Sit down. I perched on the edge of our couch, watching him pace the living room like a caged animal. My phone felt heavy in my pocket, loaded with evidence I wasn't ready to reveal yet. Mom showed me something today, he began, his voice carefully controlled. A recording app on your phone. She saw it Sunday when you left your purse on the kitchen counter while helping with dishes. My blood turned to ice. I'd been so careful about the office investigation that I'd completely forgotten about the recording app still running during cleanup. Lynn must have seen the active recording notification on my lock screen. She thinks you've been recording our family conversations without permission, David continued, studying my face for reactions. In California, that's illegal, Sarah. You could be charged with a felony. The accusation hung between us like a blade. Lynn had turned my evidence gathering into a criminal act, positioning herself as the victim of my supposed surveillance. Why would you do that? David's voice cracked slightly. What were you trying to catch us saying? I had 2 choices, deny everything and hope Lynn had no other evidence, or admit to the recordings and try to explain why they were necessary. Either path led through a minefield. David, there are things you don't understand about what's been happening. Then explain them, he exploded, his composure finally breaking. Because right now, it looks like my wife has been secretly recording my family for months, looking for, what? Evidence that we don't like you? Sarah, if you felt unwelcome, why didn't you just talk to me? The genuine hurt in his voice almost broke my resolve. This was exactly what Lynn had calculated, David discovering my betrayal before I could present my evidence, making me look like the aggressor instead of the victim. Your mother has been lying to you about me, I said carefully. The recording was the only way to prove it. Prove what, exactly? That my 70-year-old mother doesn't speak perfect English? That she sometimes feels frustrated trying to communicate with her daughter-in-law? David stopped pacing, fixing me with a stare I'd never seen before. Or were you hoping to catch her saying something you could use against our family? Lynn had prepared him well. Every reasonable explanation I might offer had been preemptively reframed as evidence of my malicious intent. David, please just listen to what I recorded before you. Absolutely not. His voice went flat and cold. I'm not going to be part of whatever twisted game you're playing. Mom was right, you've been building some kind of case against us from the beginning. Right. Of course Lynn had positioned it that way. She also told me about the apartment investigations, David continued, and my heart stopped entirely. Pacific Property Management called her yesterday. Apparently someone's been harassing their clients, making accusations about payoffs and conspiracy. They wanted to warn her that a woman claiming to be related to the Chen family was asking inappropriate questions about our housing applications. Patricia Wong had called Lynn. My careful investigation had been reported back to the very person I was investigating. I felt like a mouse who'd just realized the maze had no exit. Mom thinks you're having some kind of breakdown, David said, his anger giving way to something that looked almost like pity. The paranoia, the secret recordings, the conspiracy theories about apartment rejections. Sarah, these are serious warning signs. The manipulation was breathtaking. In less than 24 hours, Lynn had transformed my investigation into evidence of mental illness, my recordings into criminal activity, and my search for truth into paranoid delusion. She wants me to ask if you'll consider talking to someone. A professional. Lynn wanted me medicated. Discredited. Committed, if possible. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw that Lynn had already won this round. David was staring at me like I was a stranger, someone potentially dangerous who'd infiltrated his life under false pretenses. The birthday party was in 3 days. If I was going to save my marriage, I needed a completely different strategy. Okay, I said quietly. David blinked, clearly expecting more fight. Okay? You're right. I'll talk to someone. I reached for his hand, relieved when he didn't pull away. But David, I need you to promise me something. Don't make any major decisions about us until after your birthday party. Can you give me that much? He squeezed my fingers, and for a moment I saw the man I'd fallen in love with instead of Lynn's carefully programmed son. I promise. But Sarah, this recording thing stops now. Delete the app. I nodded, pulling out my phone and making a show of uninstalling the app. What David didn't know was that I'd already uploaded every recording to 3 separate cloud accounts. Lynn might have won this battle, but the war was far from over. I just needed to change tactics entirely. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while David slept fitfully beside me. Every few minutes he'd shift restlessly, and I wondered what dreams Lynn had planted in his subconscious. The woman was more dangerous than I'd given her credit for. She hadn't just anticipated my investigation, she'd weaponized it against me. But something nagged at me about Patricia Wong's call to Lynn. The timeline didn't make sense. I'd visited Pacific Property Management on Tuesday morning, and Lynn had texted David about Mike's suspicious behavior on Wednesday morning. That meant Patricia had called Lynn within hours of our meeting, despite her claims about client confidentiality. At 6 a.m., I slipped out of bed and drove to a 24-hour diner in Alhambra, far enough from our neighborhood that I wouldn't risk running into anyone from David's family. I needed to think, and I needed coffee strong enough to fuel what was about to be the most important 48 hours of my marriage. The revelation hit me halfway through my second cup. Lynn and Patricia Wong weren't just business associates. The speed of that phone call, the detailed report Patricia had apparently given about our conversation, they were friends. Maybe even relatives. I pulled out my phone and started searching social media with new parameters. Patricia Wong, Monterey Park. Patricia Wong, Chen family. Patricia Wong, there. A Facebook profile showing Patricia at what looked like a Chinese New Year celebration. And there, in the background of one photo, was Lynn Chen, both women wearing matching red jackets like they were part of the same family group. My hands trembled as I scrolled through Patricia's photos. The two women appeared together at multiple events over the past 5 years. Birthday parties, holiday celebrations, what looked like a wedding reception. In one particularly damning image from last Christmas, Patricia was holding baby Marcus while Lynn cut a cake in the background. Lynn's apartment sabotage wasn't just manipulation, it was a family business. I screenshot every photo showing the two women together, then started cross-referencing names in the comments. Patricia Wong Chen. Chen was her married name. She wasn't just Lynn's friend or business contact. Patricia Wong was Lynn's sister-in-law. The entire Pacific Property Management operation was a front. Lynn hadn't hired strangers to sabotage our housing applications, she'd enlisted family members to systematically destroy our chances of independence. The money I'd found in her office wasn't payments to a third-party service. It was reimbursements to Patricia for bribes paid to actual property managers. But that also meant Patricia had lied to me about more than just her relationship with Lynn. If she was family, she knew exactly who I was when I walked into her office. My entire undercover investigation had been theater, with Patricia feeding me just enough information to make me feel like I was uncovering the truth while actually setting me up for Lynn's counterattack. I needed to call Jennifer immediately. Sarah? It's 7 in the morning, is everything. Jennifer, what's Patricia Wong's relationship to your family? Silence. Jennifer? How do you know about Patricia? Just answer the question. Please. She's Dad's brother's wife. Uncle Chen married her maybe 10 years ago. Sarah, why are you asking about Aunt Patricia? Aunt Patricia. The woman who'd confessed to taking bribes for sabotaging housing applications was David's aunt. The woman who'd reported my visit back to Lynn within hours was family. Jennifer, I need to see you today. Before the birthday party tomorrow. And I need you to bring Kevin. Sarah, David told me about Mom's concerns. Maybe you should talk to a counselor before. Your Aunt Patricia runs a business that takes money from parents who want to control their adult children's housing choices. Your mother has paid her over $40,000 to make sure David and I can't find an apartment that would give us independence from your family. I took a deep breath. And yesterday, when I tried to investigate this, Patricia called your mother immediately to report everything I'd said. The silence stretched so long I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. That's impossible, Jennifer finally whispered. Mom wouldn't, Aunt Patricia wouldn't. I have photos, Jennifer. Financial records. Emails. Your mother has been systematically sabotaging my relationship with David for 18 months, and she's been paying family members to help her do it. Why are you telling me this? Because tomorrow at that party, I'm going to tell David everything. And when I do, your family is going to split apart. Some people will believe me, some will believe your mother, and everyone is going to have to choose sides. My voice caught slightly. I don't want you to be blindsided. Jennifer was crying now, soft hiccuping sounds that made my chest ache. Sarah, if this is true, if Mom really did all this, David's going to be devastated. He worships her. I know. But Jennifer, she's planning to make him choose between me and the family tomorrow anyway. At least this way he'll be choosing based on the truth instead of lies. What do you need from Kevin and me? I closed my eyes, grateful that at least one member of David's family was willing to listen. I need you to be there when I tell him. And I need you both to be ready to confirm what you've seen with your own eyes over the past year. Tomorrow was going to destroy everything. But sometimes destruction was the only path to truth. The day of David's birthday party arrived gray and drizzling, which felt appropriate for what was about to become the worst day of his life. I stood in our bathroom at 6 a.m., staring at my reflection while David showered, trying to prepare myself for the conversation that would either save my marriage or end it completely. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Kevin and I will be there. But Sarah, we found something else. Can you come early? Before the family arrives? My stomach dropped. What else could there possibly be? David emerged from the shower, humming the same tune he always did when he was nervous, a Chinese folk song Lin used to sing when he was little. Even now, hours before I planned to detonate his world, he was unconsciously seeking comfort in his mother's memory. You seem calmer today, he said, wrapping a towel around his waist. I'm glad. Mom was really worried about your state of mind. Of course she was. I managed a smile. I think talking through everything helped. Thank you for being patient with me. David's face softened, and he kissed my forehead gently. I love you, Sarah. Whatever's been going on, we'll figure it out together. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. In 3 hours, I was going to shatter his trust in the person he loved most in the world, and he had no idea it was coming. I love you too, I whispered, meaning every word. I arrived at the Chen house at noon, 2 hours before the party was scheduled to start. Jennifer met me at the door, her face pale and strained. Kevin stood behind her in the hallway, holding a manila folder that made my pulse quicken. We went through more of Mom's papers last night, Jennifer said without preamble. After you told us about Aunt Patricia, we knew we had to look deeper. Kevin opened the folder, revealing what looked like financial statements. Sarah, it's not just the apartments. Mom's been paying people to interfere with David's life for years. Dating websites, job applications, even his college housing. My legs felt weak. Show me. The evidence was damning. Bank records showing payments to 3 different online dating services, with memo lines like profile management and compatibility screening. A $5,000 payment to someone named Robert Martinez at David's company, dated just 2 months after David started working there. Email printouts showing Lynn communicating with various service providers about family guidance services. This payment to Robert Martinez, I said, pointing to the bank record. Isn't he David's supervisor? Jennifer nodded miserably. The one who's been giving David all those weekend projects lately. The ones that kept him too busy to look at apartments with you. The scope of Lynn's manipulation was breathtaking. She hadn't just been sabotaging our relationship, she'd been controlling every aspect of David's adult life. His job, his living situation, even his dating prospects before he met me. There's more, Kevin said quietly. We found a contract with a private investigator. Mom's been having you followed for 6 months, Sarah. She has photos of everywhere you go, everyone you talk to. A chill ran down my spine. Where are these photos? That's the thing, we can't find them. But the payment records show monthly installments of $2,000 to Chin Investigative Services. Chin. Another family business. Jennifer, Kevin, I need to ask you both something, and I need complete honesty. How many of David's previous girlfriends went through something like this? The siblings exchanged a look that told me everything I needed to know. All of them, Jennifer whispered. Every single one. But we never saw the pattern until now. Mom always had different reasons for why each girl wasn't right for David. The front door opened, and Lynn's voice echoed through the house. Jennifer? Kevin? You're here early. We had run out of time. Lynn appeared in the doorway of the living room, immaculate as always in a burgundy silk blouse and black slacks. Her smile faltered for just a fraction of a second when she saw me sitting with her children, surrounded by scattered financial documents, but she recovered with the grace of a seasoned performer. Sarah, darling, you're early. How wonderful. She moved toward us with measured steps, her eyes scanning the papers we hadn't had time to hide. What are you all looking at so intently? Jennifer's hands shook as she tried to casually close the manila folder, but it was too late. Lynn had already seen enough. Just family photos, Kevin said quickly, but his voice cracked on the lie. Lynn's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture, a subtle straightening that reminded me of a cat preparing to strike. How lovely. I do enjoy reminiscing about David's childhood. She settled into her favorite armchair with deliberate calm. Sarah, I'm so pleased you decided to join us today. After our conversation yesterday, David was worried you might not feel comfortable. The threat was wrapped in silk, but it was unmistakably clear. She was reminding me that she held all the cards, that David already believed I was unstable, paranoid, potentially dangerous. I wouldn't miss David's birthday, I replied, matching her tone. Family is so important. Yes, Lynn agreed, her smile sharpening. Family loyalty is everything. Don't you think, Jennifer? Jennifer's face went pale. She understood the subtext. Lynn was demanding her daughter choose sides, right here, right now. Mom, Jennifer began hesitantly, we need to talk about. Oh. Before I forget, Lynn interrupted, reaching for her purse. Sarah, I found something that belongs to you. She pulled out a small digital camera, one I'd never seen before. You left this in my office Sunday evening. Such an interesting collection of photos. My blood turned to ice. The camera wasn't mine, which meant Lynn had planted evidence of my snooping to support her story. But more terrifyingly, if she had photos of me in her office, she had proof I'd lied to David about going through her belongings. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said carefully. Oh, I don't think so. Lynn's voice remained pleasant, but her eyes were arctic. The timestamps are quite clear. You were in my private office for nearly 15 minutes Sunday night, photographing confidential family documents. In some states, that might be considered breaking and entering. Kevin looked between his mother and me with growing alarm. Mom, what are you talking about? I'm talking about your brother's wife conducting surveillance on our family, Kevin. Recording our conversations, searching through private papers, even hiring people to investigate your Aunt Patricia's business. Lynn's performance was masterful, hurt, bewildered, reluctantly sharing painful truths. I've been trying to protect David from this knowledge, but I think it's time he understood what we're dealing with. The trap was perfect. Every piece of evidence I gathered could now be reframed as proof of my own criminal behavior. My investigation into Lynn's manipulation had become the manipulation itself. That's not what happened, Jennifer said quietly, surprising everyone. Mom, we found the bank records. The payments to Aunt Patricia, to the dating websites, to David's supervisor. We know what you've been doing. The mask finally slipped. For just a moment, Lynn's composure cracked, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. Jennifer Chen, you will not speak to me that way, she snapped, her accent suddenly thicker. I have done everything to protect this family. By sabotaging David's relationships? By paying people to control his life? Kevin's voice was rising. Mom, some of these payments go back 6 years. The sound of car doors slamming in the driveway cut through the tension. Through the window, I could see David walking up the front path, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the navy sweater Lynn had given him last Christmas. He had no idea he was walking into a war zone. We're about to find out whose story he believes, Lynn said quietly, her composure restored. She smoothed her blouse and smiled as the front door opened. Happy birthday to me. David called out cheerfully. Sorry I'm late, traffic on the 405 was murder. He rounded the corner into the living room, still grinning, and stopped short when he saw our faces. What's going on? Why does everyone look like someone died? Lynn stood gracefully, moving to kiss her son's cheek. David, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. We need to talk. David's eyes swept the room, taking in Kevin's pale face, Jennifer clutching the manila folder, and Lynn's perfectly composed mask of maternal concern. When his gaze landed on me, I saw the exact moment he noticed the scattered financial documents on the coffee table. Sarah? His voice carried a warning I'd never heard before. What are these papers? David, sit down, Lynn said gently, guiding him to the sofa. Your wife has been going through our private financial records. Bank statements, tax documents, personal correspondence. I watched my husband's face transform as Lynn's words sank in. The confusion shifted to disbelief, then to something that looked dangerously like betrayal. That's not the whole story, I said quickly. David, your mother has been paying people too. She's been recording our family conversations for months, Lynn interrupted smoothly. And yesterday I discovered she'd hired someone to investigate your Aunt Patricia's business. She's been building some kind of case against us. David turned to stare at me, and I saw our marriage hanging by a thread. Is that true? Did you record my family? The question was a trap with no safe answer. Lie, and Jennifer could contradict me. Tell the truth, and confirm Lynn's narrative that I was the aggressor. Yes, but only because. Jesus Christ, Sarah. David ran his hands through his hair, the same gesture he'd inherited from his father. Recording people without consent is a felony in California. You could go to prison. David, look at the bank records, Kevin interjected desperately. Mom paid $43,000 to sabotage your housing applications. She's been controlling your life for years. That's enough. Lynn's voice cracked like a whip. Kevin, you will not participate in this woman's delusions. Sarah has clearly manipulated you both into believing her paranoid fantasies. But David was already reaching for the manila folder, his jaw set in a stubborn line I knew meant he was going to get to the bottom of things regardless of who got hurt in the process. Lynn tried to intercept him, but Jennifer held the folder out of reach. Read them, David, Jennifer said quietly. Read everything. The silence stretched as David flipped through bank statements, his expression growing darker with each page. I could see him doing mental math, cross-referencing dates with his memories of apartment rejections and workplace complications. $15,000 to Pacific Property Management, he read aloud, his voice hollow. Payment memo, application processing, Chen family. He looked up at Lynn. Mom, what is this? A donation to help other families with housing assistance, Lynn replied without missing a beat. Patricia mentioned they had programs for young couples with credit challenges. On the same day Sarah and I applied for the Pasadena apartment, David continued reading. The apartment that rejected us for insufficient rental history even though we had perfect credit. I could see the pieces clicking together in his mind, the same way they had for me. But Lynn wasn't finished. David, your wife broke into my office and stole those documents, she said, pulling out the digital camera. She's been systematically violating our privacy, building a case to destroy our family. Look at these photos she took. Lynn turned on the camera's display screen, showing image after image of her desk, her financial records, even shots of her computer screen. The timestamps clearly showed me in her office for 17 minutes last Sunday. She planted that camera, I said desperately. I never. The metadata doesn't lie, Sarah, Lynn said sadly. Your phone's GPS data, the camera's internal clock, even your fingerprints on my filing cabinets. I had everything professionally documented before calling David yesterday. The trap was perfect. Even if David believed my explanations about the recordings and financial evidence, he couldn't deny the physical proof that I'd violated his mother's privacy. Lynn had outmaneuvered me completely. I think, David said slowly, everyone needs to calm down and... The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. Through the window, I could see Wei returning from his afternoon walk, along with 3 other cars pulling into the driveway. The rest of the family had arrived for the birthday party. The doorbell's chime felt like a death knell. Through the living room window, I watched as Uncle Chen helped Aunt Patricia out of their silver Honda, her arms full of wrapped presents. Behind them, David's cousins Michael and Lisa emerged from their respective cars with their children in tow. The entire extended family had arrived for what was supposed to be a celebration. Perfect timing, Lynn murmured, smoothing her hair. David, we should probably continue this conversation privately. No. David's voice was steel. He was still clutching the bank statements, his knuckles white. If this involves the whole family, then the whole family deserves to hear it. Lynn's composure flickered for just a moment. She'd orchestrated this confrontation to happen before the party, planning to present David with a sanitized version where I was clearly the villain. Having witnesses to my accusations wasn't part of her script. David, sweetheart, your guests. Can wait. He stood abruptly, the financial papers scattering across the coffee table. Jennifer, go let everyone in. But tell them we need 30 minutes before we start the party. Jennifer shot me a look that might have been apology or encouragement, I couldn't tell which, before heading to the front door. The sound of cheerful greetings and birthday wishes drifted in from the hallway, a surreal contrast to the toxic atmosphere in the living room. Aunt Patricia, I heard David call out. Could you join us for a moment? There are some questions about your business. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it, the moment Lynn's carefully constructed web would either collapse or strangle me completely. Patricia appeared in the doorway wearing a bright yellow dress and an expression of mild curiosity that I now recognized as performance art. David. Happy birthday, sweetheart. What questions about my business? David held up one of the bank statements, pointing to the Pacific Property Management payment. Can you explain why my mother paid your company $15,000 on the same day my wife and I applied for an apartment? Patricia's eyes widened in what looked like genuine surprise, but she recovered quickly. Oh my goodness, is that what this is about? Your mother hired us to help research neighborhoods for you. She was worried about safety ratings, school districts for future grandchildren. It's a consultation service we provide for concerned parents. The lie was smooth, reasonable, completely plausible. But Kevin was shaking his head. That's not what the email said, Aunt Patricia. The one about ensuring application denial for David Chen and Sarah Morrison. Kevin pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos. I took pictures of everything before Mom got home yesterday. Patricia's face went pale. Kevin, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Show her the recording, Jennifer said quietly from the doorway. She'd returned from greeting the guests, and her face was set with determination. Sarah, show David the recording of Aunt Patricia confessing to taking bribes. Lynn stepped forward quickly. David, you cannot trust anything on that woman's phone. She's already proven she'll record people illegally, violate privacy, fabricate evidence. I didn't fabricate anything, I said, pulling out my phone with hands that barely trembled. Your Aunt Patricia explained her entire business model to me. How families pay her to sabotage their children's housing applications. David looked between his mother and his aunt, something cracking in his expression. Everyone stopped talking. Right now. He turned to me with eyes I'd never seen before, cold, analytical, determined. Sarah, play the recording. My finger hovered over the audio file. Once I played this, there would be no going back. David would hear his aunt admit to destroying people's lives for money, would understand that his mother had paid for those services, would realize that his entire adult life had been manipulated. But he would also hear me lying to Patricia, pretending to want her services, proving that I was capable of deception too. David, Lynn said softly, please don't let her destroy our family with lies and stolen recordings. You know who I am. You know how much I love you. The plea hit its mark. David hesitated, looking at his mother with desperate hope that somehow this could all be explained away. That's when Patricia Wong made the mistake that changed everything. Lynn, she said in rapid Mandarin, tell him the American girl is lying. He'll believe you over her. But David had spent summers in Taiwan as a child. His Mandarin was rusty, but it wasn't gone. He understood every word. The silence that followed Patricia's words was deafening. I watched David's face transform as the Mandarin processed in his mind, first confusion, then recognition, then something that looked like his entire world cracking apart. What did you just say? He asked Patricia in English, his voice deadly quiet. Patricia's eyes darted between Lynn and David, realizing her mistake too late. I was just trying to help your mother explain. In Mandarin. You called my wife the American girl and told my mother I would believe her lies over Sarah's truth. David's voice was getting louder with each word. Why would you assume Sarah couldn't understand you? Lynn stepped forward quickly, damage control mode activated. David, Patricia misspoke. She's upset about these accusations. How long? David turned to face his mother directly. How long have you been talking about my wife in Mandarin, assuming she couldn't understand? The question hung in the air like a blade. I could see Lynn calculating her options, weighing lies against exposure. But Jennifer made the choice for her. Always, Jennifer said quietly from the doorway. Mom, you've been calling Sarah the stubborn American girl in Mandarin since the day David brought her home. You've been planning to get rid of her for over a year. David's head snapped toward his sister. You knew about this? I knew Mom didn't like Sarah, but I didn't know about the apartment sabotage or the payments until yesterday. David, I swear I thought it was just normal mother-in-law disapproval. Patricia tried to back toward the hallway, but Kevin blocked her path. Aunt Patricia, tell him the truth. Tell David what your business really does. I think I should go, Patricia stammered. This is a family matter. You are family, David said, his voice carrying authority I'd rarely heard. And you took money from my mother to sabotage my housing applications. So you're going to explain exactly how that worked. Patricia looked desperately at Lynn, who gave the slightest shake of her head. But David caught the exchange. Mom, did you just signal her not to talk? The moment stretched impossibly long. Through the doorway, I could hear David's cousins and their children chatting in the kitchen, completely unaware that the family was imploding 20 feet away. Someone was setting up what sounded like karaoke equipment, probably for David's traditional birthday performance. David, Lynn said finally, her voice carrying all the maternal authority of 32 years. Whatever mistakes I may have made, I made them because I love you. Because I wanted to protect you from someone who clearly doesn't belong in this family. Protect me from what, exactly? From a woman who records private conversations, breaks into offices, investigates your family like we're criminals. Lynn's composure was finally cracking. From someone who would rather destroy us than try to understand our culture. Your culture? I found my voice at last, months of suppressed anger finally breaking free. You want to talk about culture? In Chinese culture, isn't respect for marriage sacred? Isn't family harmony built on honesty, not manipulation? Lynn's eyes flashed dangerously. Don't you dare lecture me about Chinese culture, you. She stopped herself, but not before David caught the direction of her words. I what, Mom? Finish the sentence. Lynn pressed her lips together, but Patricia, panicking, filled the silence. Lynn, maybe we should tell him about the private investigator reports. Show him the photos of her meeting with. What private investigator? David's voice could have cut glass. I felt the blood drain from my face. Kevin had mentioned payments to Chin Investigative Services, but we hadn't found the actual surveillance reports. Lynn had been having me followed for months, documenting my every move. Mom, David said slowly, what photos? Lynn straightened her shoulders, making a decision that would change everything. David, there are things about your wife you don't know. Things that will break your heart. She walked to her purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. But you need to see them. The envelope in Lynn's hands felt like a weapon. David stared at it with the expression of someone watching a car accident in slow motion, horrified but unable to look away. Don't, I whispered, but my voice was lost in the sudden chaos as Uncle Chin appeared in the doorway. What's all the shouting about? He asked in accented English, then switched to rapid Mandarin when he saw Lynn's face. Sister, what's happening? The children are asking about cake. Lynn responded in Mandarin, her voice tight with controlled fury. David's wife has been spying on us. She recorded our private conversations and broke into my office. Now she's trying to turn the children against me. Uncle Chen's expression hardened as he looked at me. This is very serious accusation. Uncle Chen, David said slowly, did you know about Pacific Property Management? About the payments Mom made to sabotage our apartment applications? The older man's face went completely blank, the kind of studied neutrality that comes with years of keeping family secrets. I know your mother loves you very much. That's not what I asked. Patricia grabbed her husband's arm, whispering urgently in Mandarin, we need to leave. This is getting out of control. But David caught that too. His childhood Mandarin might be rusty, but words like leave and control were apparently clear enough. Nobody's leaving, David said firmly. Not until I understand what the hell has been happening in my own life. He turned back to Lynn, who was still clutching the envelope. Show me whatever's in there, Mom. All of it. Lynn's hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. Inside were dozens of photographs, surveillance shots taken with a telephoto lens. Me leaving work, me meeting Jennifer at Starbucks, me entering Pacific Property Management. But there were other photos too, ones that made my stomach clench with sudden understanding. This is your wife meeting with divorce attorneys, Lynn said, spreading the photos across the coffee table like playing cards. 3 different law firms in the past month. Here she is at Morrison Family Law, discussing asset division. Here's another consultation at Chan and Associates. Yes, David, she went to lawyers with our family name. David picked up one of the photos, a clear shot of me shaking hands with a woman in a business suit outside a downtown office building. The timestamp showed last Tuesday, the day I'd called in sick to investigate Patricia's business. Sarah? David's voice was hollow. Were you planning to divorce me? The question hit like a physical blow. No. David, I was researching lawyers in case your mother tried to. Tried to what? Protect my son from a woman who was already planning to leave him? Lynn's voice carried the satisfaction of checkmate. David, she's been building a case against our entire family while secretly consulting divorce attorneys. Does that sound like someone committed to making your marriage work? Jennifer stepped forward, studying the photos with a frown. Mom, when were these taken? Because this one shows Sarah at Morrison Family Law on Tuesday, but look at the timestamp, it says Monday. Lynn snatched the photo back quickly, but not before Kevin had seen it too. The timestamps are wrong on half of these, Kevin said, picking up another surveillance photo. And Mom, this shot of Sarah supposedly meeting with lawyers? I recognize that building. It's the medical complex where her gynecologist is. She told me she had an appointment there when I called her about lunch last week. David looked up sharply. Your gynecologist? Heat flooded my cheeks. I thought I might be pregnant. I wanted to be sure before telling you, in case it was a false alarm. The silence that followed was deafening. Lynn's face had gone ashen, realizing that her surveillance evidence was crumbling under scrutiny. Were you? David asked quietly. I shook my head, fighting back tears. No. But David, I wouldn't have been consulting divorce lawyers if I thought we might be starting a family. Lynn scrambled for control. Those other photos are still valid. She was clearly investigating our family, planning some kind of legal action. Because you were sabotaging our marriage. I finally exploded. Because you've been lying about me for 18 months, paying people to control David's life, turning his own family against me. Enough. David's voice cracked through the room like thunder. Everyone stopped talking. Right now. He stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by scattered photos and bank statements, looking like a man watching his entire world collapse. Sarah, he said quietly, play the recording. My hands shook as I found the audio file. This was it, the moment that would either destroy Lynn's web of lies or finish destroying my marriage. David stood perfectly still, waiting, while his family held their collective breath. I pressed play. Patricia's voice filled the room, crystal clear. For comprehensive consultation services, we typically recommend a retainer starting at $10,000. That covers up to 6 months of application management and guidance services. My own voice followed. I see you've worked with the Chin family before. I'm not able to discuss specific client relationships. Privacy is very important in our line of work. But hypothetically, if I wanted to prevent someone from getting approved for apartments in specific neighborhoods, you could handle that? Hypothetically, yes. We have relationships with property managers throughout the San Gabriel Valley, and downtown LA quality control is essential in maintaining neighborhood standards. David's face went white as Patricia's words sank in. But I let the recording continue, because the most damning part was still coming. Look, we got paid $3,000 to flag your application, came the voice of the Sunset Gardens manager. The whole thing felt wrong, but Patricia Wong said the family had legitimate concerns about financial responsibility. I stopped the recording. The silence was absolute. David turned slowly to face his aunt. You took money to sabotage our apartment applications. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. David, it's not. Your mother was concerned about neighborhood safety. Bullshit. David's voice was deadly quiet. You just admitted on tape that you take bribes to reject rental applications. Lynn stepped forward desperately. David, she was protecting you. From what, Mom? From having my own apartment with my wife? David picked up the bank statements again. $43,000. You spent more money sabotaging my housing than most people make in a year. I spent that money ensuring you didn't make mistakes that would hurt your future. My future? David laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Or your control over my life? Jennifer cleared her throat softly. David, there's something else. Sarah, tell him about Sunday dinner. What Mom said in Mandarin when you were in the bathroom. I took a deep breath. This was the moment Lynn had never seen coming, the revelation that her secret weapon had been useless all along. Your mother told your father in Mandarin that the American girl was finally starting to crack under pressure. She said I'd be gone by Christmas, and you would thank her later. I looked directly at Lynn. But the thing is, I understood every word. I've been fluent in Mandarin since college. The color drained completely from Lynn's face. Every conversation, I continued. Every lie you told about what I supposedly said. Every manipulation you planned right in front of me. I understood all of it. David stared at his mother with an expression I'd never seen before. You've been lying about Sarah in Mandarin for 18 months, thinking she couldn't understand you. Lynn's composure finally shattered completely. She doesn't belong in this family. She's stubborn, disrespectful, she doesn't understand our ways. Our ways? David's voice rose. Since when do our ways include hiring private investigators and bribing property managers and lying to my face for over a year? The room erupted as Uncle Chen started arguing with Wei in rapid Mandarin, Jennifer began crying, and Patricia tried again to leave. But David cut through the chaos with 2 words. Get out. Everyone froze. Mom, Aunt Patricia, Uncle Chen, get out of my house. Now. Lynn's face crumpled. David, please. You spent $43,000 sabotaging my marriage. You had my wife followed by private investigators. You lied to me about her for 18 months while she understood every word. His voice broke slightly. I trusted you completely, and you used that trust to destroy the person I love most. As his family filed out in stunned silence, David turned to me with tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry, he whispered. Sarah, I'm so fucking sorry. I fell into his arms as 18 months of manipulation finally crumbled into dust.